Hello. This webinar is going to show you how to access and run ART reports. So after you log in to ServicePoint, in the upper right-hand corner, you will have a link to ART. You will click on that, and you will see a series of 5 folders. The reports are located in the public folder. You click on the little arrow. The list opens up, and there are a series of more folders, and Homeward currently has 2 folders in which you will find ART reports. We have the admin folder and the in-use folder, and depending on the report, you may find it in the admin folder or the in-use. So make sure you look through both if you can't find a report. So if I expand the admin folder, you will notice that there are 113 reports in this folder. So you will need to use your next button to find the report that you are looking for. So as we go through, you will see that the first series of reports are numbered. The numbered reports are Bowman created reports. Any other reports that you find in either of these 2 folders that do not have a number, these are customized reports that Homeward has created. So the numbered ones are Bowman, and the non-numbered ones are Homeward created reports. So I'm going to scroll back, and I'm going to run the HUD APR. So when you are looking at the list of reports, the one thing to make sure that you're paying attention to is that each report has a version number behind it. And we try to stay on top of the current versions of all of our reports, but sometimes we do get a version behind. Sometimes when we copy the reports from the Bowman site, we forget to delete the old version. So if you are looking at this list and you happen to see version 26 and version 27, you always want to make sure you're running the highest version number, because again, sometimes we might forget to delete the old version. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to run version number 27, which is, in fact, the only version here. So I'm going to scroll my mouse over here to this gray icon that says View. I'm going to click, and now I'm going to wait. ART is very slow. So if you have a slow internet, then ART will be even slower. So you have to have patience. While we're waiting, I also want to remind you that ART is 24 hours behind. So if you run a report today and make changes, you cannot get a new report until tomorrow. So that's always very important to remember if you have some kind of deadline that you have to wait until the next day to get a report. And as you can see, it is very slow. So we just sit and we wait. Okay. When you pick the ART report that you want to run, you are going to be faced with a series of prompts. And each ART report prompts are different and in different orders. So it's always very important to pay very close attention to what the prompt is asking for. So in this case, the first prompt says provider group. Well, no one usually ever runs a report based on a group. They want to run it based on one provider. So I'm going to click on the prompt that says Select Provider, and in my search box, I can do one of three things. I can type the name of my provider, I can type the provider ID number, or I can hit Enter, and it's going to give me every provider that is available in the database. So if I type the number 2, it will give me all providers that have a provider ID of 2 in their provider ID number. And as you can see, there's lots of 2s, and they are in alphabetical order. So typing a 2 might have been a bad idea because 2 is in a lot of them. But I was looking for Homeward, which provider ID number is just 2. Now, I need the name over here, so I can either double-click or use my arrows. I'm going to double-click, and there's my name. What is my start date? I'm going to use the calendar, and I'm going to say January 1 of this year, end date plus 1 day. This is why we have to remember about the 24 hours. If I want to run this report through August 31st, my end date plus 1 is September 1. Okay, so that's always important for you to remember. My type is always whatever the type is when I'm doing my data entry. And for most of our programs, that is HUD. Okay? Now, I have an effective date. This is easy to remember, and it's very critical. Your effective date is whatever your end date was. So again, I'm going to pick 9/1. Now, on the APR, there are 4 questions. Is using receiving income, is using receiving benefits, is using receiving disability, and is using interim reviews. Okay? For these questions, the answer is always yes. Just that's all you have to remember is yes. Okay? So I'm selecting yes for these questions. Okay? Now, as long as I answered all of my prompts, my Run Query button is blackened in. If you forget a prompt and your Run Query button is grayed out, that means you did forget a prompt and have to go back. So I'm going to click Run Query, and now I'm going to wait again. Art is very slow, so you have to have patience. And one thing to keep in mind, if you are running an extremely large date range, then it will take even longer for the report to build. So depending on the provider and the date range, this can spin for some time. The APR that I'm currently running is a very large report in general, so even if I was picking a small date range, it would still take a long time for it to process. So we just have to wait for it to finish processing. Okay, now sometimes when you run art reports, you get an error message that tells you no data to retrieve. A lot of times that doesn't really mean that, so I'm just going to click OK. And now I want to view this report. You never review the report while it is in art, because everything that you click on while inside art is going to cause it to spin, spin, spin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump this report into Excel. So I click over here where it says Document, Save to my computer as Excel. I'm going to get a spinning thing here, or in this case flashing. It's done. I click on it, I open it up. I have now run my art report. And as you can see down here at the bottom, there are lots of tabs. One of probably the most important tabs of every single report that you run is the very last tab. And it is always called Additional Information. And before you panic and say that something is wrong with the report, always check this tab, because a lot of times there's a problem with the report because maybe you accidentally put the end date as the start date and the start date as the end date. Or you selected the wrong provider by mistake. So always check this tab to make sure that you ran the report for the right provider, the right start and end date, and also to remember your effective date is always your end date. Okay? So again, this report has lots of tabs. Every report that you run in ART has many tabs. So if you're looking for specific data, make sure that you look at all of the tabs to find the data that you're looking for. Once it's in Excel, you can do File, Save As, and save it to your computer. I'm not going to save it. Okay? I'm back in ART. Now, at this point, I can do one of two things. I can rerun this report for another provider, or I can run a completely different report. So first, I want to show you how to rerun the same report for just a different provider. I'm going to click on up here where it says Refresh All, and it's going to bring me back my prompts, which you will notice are saved from the first run. And all I'm going to do is change my provider. So let's pick just some provider here. We'll just pick this one. Now, pay attention over here that you are now running this report for two providers. You don't want to do that. So you have to remove the old provider so that you can run it for the new provider. I click Run Query, and I wait once again. And remember, while you're waiting, depending again on the date range and the provider, this processing time can take a minute or two. And you just have to have patience and wait. So if your internet is already slow in your building, ART will be even slower. And sometimes if your internet is too slow, ART will not function properly at all. So if you are running ART reports and are getting weird error messages, you know, just give us a call and let us know that you're getting weird error messages. But if it is because of a slow internet, we can't do anything about it, because that sometimes happens to us here at Homeward. So again, I'm just waiting for the report to process. Okay, again, I get another message. I just click OK. Now this time, instead of saving it to Excel, I can come down and do Save As, and I can save it as a PDF. So you can save it as Excel or you can save it as a PDF. I'm actually going to save it. I'm not going to save it. So what I want to do now is show you how to run a different art report. So as you can see up here at the top, I have two tabs. I have my Service Point tab and I have my Art tab. I'm going to close my Art tab, and it's back to the list of reports. Okay? Now this time I'm going to go into our other folder, which is in use. And again, you will see that there are 24 reports here, and they start off numbered, and then they start showing you reports that have no numbers. So again, the numbered reports are the ones Bowman created, and the ones that don't have numbers are the ones that Homeward has created. So this time I'm going to run the data report card. So I'm going to run the 252. Okay? Now, you will also notice that for every report, there is a corresponding manual for the same report. I will tell you that these manuals sometimes read like the directions for putting an entertainment cabinet together. They are not necessarily very helpful. So once again, I'm going to move my mouse over here, click on this gray icon, and I'm going to wait for my prompt window. And again, it's just slow, so you have to wait for the prompts to come up. And remember, this is very important, each report set of prompts are different. Look, the first prompt is my start date. So I'm going to pick January 1 again, just because that's what I'm picking. And my end date, again, will be September 1st. Now I'm going to select my provider. This time I'm going to type words. So I'm going to pick it for Homeward. Okay. And do I want to include services? I can or I can't. Run query, and now I wait. And again, the length of time that this processing takes is dependent on two factors: the date range that you're running the data for and the report itself. The APR had many, many tabs. This report only has, say, 4 tabs. So the smaller the report, the less time. And as you can see, this report came up again fairly quickly. And again, I'm going to dump it to Excel because I never view the report in Art. It takes too long. So I dump it to Excel, and I have 1 tab, 2 tab, 3 tab, 4 tab, 4 tabs, plus my additional information. And again, additional information. Did I run my report for the correct date range and the correct provider? And this report, like a lot of reports that we have available, has a client detail tab. And when you run a report and there are errors that you need to fix, the client detail tab will tell you what the errors are and which clients are associated with those errors. So always make sure that if you have any questions about the data, see if there is a client detail tab, and in this case, it's tab D of this report. So again, I can go to File, Save As, save this Excel file. I'm not going to. And again, I can either rerun the report by clicking Refresh All and changing my provider, for example. Let's say I want to run it for this provider. I select this provider, I remove the previous provider, and I run query. Now, sometimes when you are running art reports, again, you may get funky, weird error messages, and a lot of times that is because of the internet connection. And sometimes the best solution is to close everything and start all over. So shut art down, log out of Service Point, close the internet, start Service Point up again, log in, open art, and try running your report again. Okay? So I don't know why, but sometimes that's the solution. So once again, I'm dumping this report to Excel. Okay? And I would go to my last tab that tells me the date range, who I'm running it for, and I also have a client detail tab where I can look to see if I have any errors, which clients may be affected by that error. So that's how you run the same report again. And if I want to run yet another art report, I close my art tab. I'm back to my list of art reports, and I select the other report that I want to run by clicking on the gray icon. So that concludes how to run art reports. Thanks, and have a good day.